Hey everybody, this is Jordan Lass from Demerchant Labs. Today I want to go over something with Sudograph. I want to go over the GraphQL playground. Really, this is GraphiQL, a special project that gives you this awesome interactive editor. There's another project called the GraphQL playground that is very similar to this, but to be simple, I just call this thing the playground. And it comes kind of prepackaged with Sudograph if you follow the tutorials. Let me show you how to find out the information real quick. So if you go to GitHub, I guess I moved the repo to Demerchant Labs. I'm trying to consolidate everything. But here's Sudograph. And if you go to the Sudograph book, this is really the canonical source of information about Sudograph. In here, you'll be able to find all kinds of things. And I wonder if I don't have the playground in here. Okay, well, it's with the quick starts, basically. So yeah, if you generate a new project and boot everything up, you should have a playground at this URL. And what that looks like in the code. And you can spin up a playground even if you aren't generating a project, if you have a project that already exists. Just make a playground canister. You basically just make your HTML look like this, import the playground custom element basically, and then create the custom element right here, pass in your local canister ID, and then if you do want to deploy it to production, you pass in the production ID here. And it's pretty simple. You just install Sudograph as a dependency here, and that has the playground custom element with it. And then I personally use Snowpack, but you should be able to use other bundlers. If you can't, let me know. I know there were some issues with Webpack that I have not yet fixed, but it shouldn't be too bad to fix them. So anyways, so that's the simple front end code for the playground. And then in your dfx.json, you just make an asset canister and pass in the directory that playground is built into. Then run dfx start. Personally, I don't like using the -- background because I just like to be able to control it from a terminal and see all the output and everything. So I usually have one terminal over here, and yeah, I'll just use dfx start to get that baby going. And then I have another terminal where I'll run my dfx deploy commands. I've already deployed this example, so I am in the Sudograph repository, in the examples directory, in the basic example, and I've deployed this thing. So we've got a front end canister, a GraphQL canister, and a playground canister. Just to go over it real quick, the GraphQL canister has your schema. So I've got a user and blog post. That's it. It's just a basic example. Pretty simple. The Rust code here is just an import, and then you call this macro here. And some good news, as Azel progresses, the TypeScript CDK, I'm thinking I should be able to get some pretty tight TypeScript or JavaScript integration so that you'll be able to write GraphQL code. But basically, Sudograph should have a TypeScript or a JavaScript variant so that you don't even have to think about Rust, which I think will be nice for a lot of people. So anyways, the GraphQL canister has your schema. This front end is just a front end application, like a React app basically. But I don't use React, I use custom elements. So this front end canister will represent probably your application, right? You're going to have an application that's going to be calling into the GraphQL canister. The playground, though, is an entirely separate thing. It is going to strip away all the GUI elements or whatever client application you're building. It could be a server, it could be another canister, it could be a web app, it could be an iOS or Android app. That's going to be riddled with all of your GUI components. The playground, though, like I said, strips all that away and gives you a direct interface with the GraphQL canister, and it shows you all the GraphQL queries and all the GraphQL mutations that are possible for your application. So it's really kind of like I guess like a database manager. And so if we go to the playground, so notice I've grabbed the URL that's in the documentation. I believe it's the same one, R7INP. Yep. And if sometimes these the canister IDs might be slightly different than what's in the documentation. So after I deployed, let's see, I'll get rid of all these warnings eventually. My first deploy, I mean, you probably know all this, but yeah, my first deploy, I just looked right here, the playground canister, and here's the canister ID. And also, if you don't want to go look through your terminal or you don't have the terminal logs, if you go to DFX local, there's this canister IDs.json file that will always have your canister IDs for you locally. So that's how I found the canister ID. And then you just tack on .localhost and say port 8000 here, and bada boom. I'll refresh this so you can see. Here we go. These are just a bunch of comments. I'm going to get rid of those. So let's show you how to use this playground. And I want to emphasize, the playground documents, generally speaking, everything that you can do with your GraphQL schema, all queries and all mutations. And it will let you execute all queries and all mutations. And it will also, over here on the left-hand side, this is going to give you autocomplete. It's going to have errors if you use the incorrect syntax. This is really a self-documenting, very educational piece of software here. So I highly recommend you become familiar with using it because it really helps. I mean, it tells you everything. So let's click here on the right side, docs. Oh, and sorry, one more thing. I said that it will let you do any query and any mutation. That is true. But if you have set up authorization, then so the playground doesn't have authorization built into it yet, I suppose. So you need to use the playground directly with your GraphQL canister, basically. At least for now, that's the easiest way. You really need to have this interface on your canister, GraphQL query and GraphQL mutation. And I don't believe you can have any kind of authorization in front of that yet, because the playground is just the anonymous identity, I believe. I just don't have any kind of integration yet to allow you to use other principles. So if you do have any kind of authorization, you probably can't test that with the playground. The playground is really just to test your queries and mutations directly. So in development, you might want to create, I don't know, just create a way to turn off that authorization and such. So, and hopefully over time we can make this better. But for now, that's what you got. So if we click on docs here, notice this is I guess these are the top level nodes, you could say, in our schema. We have our query and our mutation. So let's go look at the queries. These are all of the queries that are available to us. So we have read user and we have read blog post. Let's go to our schema. Okay, we have a type called user, a type called blog post. And so what has been generated for us are these two queries, read user and read blog post. Every single object type that you create here is going to have a corresponding query here. So you can see everything. It's weird. I live out in the country, but there's like tons of sirens all the time. I'm not sure if you can hear that. Yeah, every single object type is going to have a corresponding read query over here. And notice here, this is explaining the inputs to this read query. Remember, this is everything that you can do. It's right here, self-documenting. So if you want to search, these are basically filters. Then you click here, read user input, and this tells you all the fields that are available to you. And this ID field here is called a read ID input. Click here. tells you all of the fields that are available to you. And this is the end here because equals ID. ID is basically just a string. It's a scalar. Same thing with username. Read string input gives you all the things that you could pass in. These are all the possibilities. GraphQL is statically typed, so it's basically telling you every possible thing that you can do. Limit is just an int, so that's the end there. Offset is just an int, so that's the end there. And then order, you can order by different fields, and then order direction, it ends in ascending or descending. Same thing here, ascending or descending. So for queries, this is everything that you can do. Let me go over mutations real quick, and then I'll actually show you how to do those queries. So mutations, same thing. We have our two object types, user and blog post, and Sudograph is going to generate the create user, create blog post, the update user, update blog post, and the delete user, delete blog post, and also init. Sudograph takes care of this for you. Like when the canister is first being created. Unfortunately, I forgot the. I think it's called init actually. There's a special init like hook in the canister. It will actually call all of these init mutations for you, which actually initializes them with the underlying database that Sudograph uses, which is called SudoDB. And if for some reason you turn that off, then you can manually call these init mutations, but they exist, and here they are. So like I said, we've got create, update, delete, and then we have init. And same thing here. Notice we have our inputs, and then I didn't go over this earlier, but our outputs, the output is a user. So you're going to get back these types. Notice here, blog posts, this is a cross-relational filter. I'll show you how those work. And then our inputs, create user input. Here are all the fields in the input. ID is a scalar, so it ends there. Username string is a scalar, so it ends there. Blog post, though, is a create relation many input, and so it allows you to connect a number of IDs so that you can just spin up a relation many, or basically either one-to-many or many-to-many relationship, I believe. And then with blog post, the create blog post input, again, ID, publish that, title, author. Author is a create relation one input, which allows you to connect one ID. Okay, so that might still be confusing because, I don't know, it's just a bunch of documentation, but let me show you how this syntax actually works. So let's explore read user here. So, and also, this is all GraphQL based. GraphQL is not something that Sudograph made up. It's not something unique to the internet computer, right? GraphQL is a language and an ecosystem based that has existed for actually about 7 years now. I believe 2015 is when it came out. So there is a ton of information out there about GraphQL that already exists. What you want to do probably is get very familiar with the GraphQL language itself, which I'm about to start writing for you here, and then the GraphQL schema definition language, which is how you write your schema. There's tons of blog posts, YouTube videos, probably everything you need to go learn that independently. And then once you've kind of mastered that or have a working degree of knowledge, Sudograph should become very, very, very easy to you because there's just going to be a few Sudograph specific things that you have to learn. So let's use the GraphQL language to write a query. So I'm going to say query, and notice, okay, first off, notice we've got an error here. So if you just hover over it, syntax error. I have not finished the query, so it's wrong. Let's read a user. Notice it's going to autocomplete. It's suggesting to me all of the queries that are possible. So let's go with the read user. Now here's the syntax. Look over here. It's very similar to this. I need some parentheses here. And then look, it's asking me, it's auto-completing. I can do search, limit, offset, or order. Those are the fields available to me. Search, limit, offset, or order. So let's do, I guess let's do search for now. So search, and notice search is another input. So if you click here, this is another object basically with its own fields. So to do that, I'm going to do a colon with another set of curly braces. And now inside of here, I can choose any one of these fields. So I guess to be simple, I'll start with ID. And it's an ID input, which has all of these fields. So it's another object. And let's just start simple. I'll say equals. So EQ. And notice, look, it's suggesting to me at each step what I can do. I don't have an ID yet, so I'm just going to put an empty string. Okay, so let's go back. So read user is the top level here. Then search is one of the fields on this input object. So I put search in there. Search itself is another input object called, its type is read user input. If I click in here, it tells me all the fields that are available. I've chosen to only specify the ID field. ID is another input object. Its type is read ID input. If I click here, I have all these fields available to me, and I've chosen just to use the equals field. Okay, so that's all I'm going to do for my queries right now. And then if you look, the return type is an array of users, and users have these fields. So for now, this is called the selection set. I'm going to select just the ID of my users. So this is look, there are no errors, so this query should be correct. And now I'm going to execute it. Okay, so it returned nothing. It should be faster. Okay, yeah. It's pretty fast now. Okay. So I don't have any users in the database, therefore it didn't return anything. Let me do a quick mutation for you, and then we can start having some data in here. So I just commented this out, and now I'm going to use the mutation documentation to help me figure out how to do this. So mutations start like this, mutation with opening and closing curlies. So I have, if I type C, I have create user, create blog post. If I type U, it's going to autocomplete for you. So let that help you. Create user. Notice here, create user has one field called input, which is of type create user input. So let me type input here, colon, curlies, create user input. Okay, I have these fields available to me. ID, username, and blog posts. So ID, look, it's actually nullable, so that means it's optional, so I don't have to pass an ID in. If you don't pass an ID in, Sudograph will generate one for you, so I'm not going to pass one in. Username is not nullable. Did I say that the ID was not nullable? It is nullable. Not sure if I said that. ID is nullable, therefore it's optional. Username, so it's this exclamation mark right here that shows you if it's nullable or not. Username is a string that is not nullable. So I need to pass it in. And blog posts is a create relation many input. I don't have any blog posts, so I don't have any IDs to connect. Notice that that's nullable, so I don't need to pass anything in. So this actually should be a fully compliant mutation. Notice again, the return type is an array of users, and user has these fields. So in my selection set, I put the fields that I want returned. And I'm going to return the username as well. So let's execute this. Awesome. So I've now created a user, and it's generating an ID for me, and my username is lastname.js. So that's nice, I guess. So let me create a few more of these. So I'll just do one. lastname.js 1, lastname.js 2, 3, 4, and let's do 5. Right. So now let's go back to the read user query. So let's go back to the documentation here. So read user, search. So I'm going to search. So let's just grab the ID of this one here. Well, actually, let's start with the simplest possible query. So the simplest possible query has nothing in it, and that will return all records. So I've selected the ID. Let's select the usernames as well. Okay, notice these aren't really in order. So it'd be nice if we could order these. Well, look, right here we have an order field, which is an order user input, and it allows me to order by the ID or the username. I would kind of like to order by the username. So order is an object, username is an object. So notice order, an object, username, order direction. It's not an object. Username is an enum, I believe. And so I'll put, sorry, that is wrong. I'll put ascending. So it should return all the usernames ascending. So last name JS, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's what I wanted. Nice. Okay, so that's order. Now let's do limit. Let me make this look nice. I mean, you have to figure out how to do syntax for yourself, but I kind of like it like this. So limit 0 should return no records. Limit 1 returns 1 record, so you can see how this is working. Okay, so that's how limit works. And then offset, check this out. If we limit to 1, notice that returns last MGS. That is the first record based on the ordering. Now, if we do an offset of 0, it should return the same thing. Now, if I do an offset of 1, it's going to skip this first record and return the record after that as the first. So the limit basically slices the, what do we call this? I guess you could call it the selection set, but that's already being used by this. This is the selection set. I guess the results set, limit will slice that down. And offset, if you think of the selection set as like a window, if you have 10 records and you change the offset to 1, it's going to slide that window to the right by 1 so that your first record is now the second record. Offset 2 would make your first record third record. So yeah, notice offset 2, well, now we're only returning starting at last MGS2. Offset 1, offset 0. Now we have all of them. So offset and limit combined allow you to do paging. So imagine you have a website with a list of tweets or something, or blog, tweets, whatever, comments. You're not going to load, if there's 1,000 comments, you probably don't want to load all of them at the same time. So you might do a limit of, 25, offset of 0, and then when the user clicks next or scrolls down, you would say limit 25, maybe offset 25 or something like that. And if I had more records, then it would return the next set. So that's really nice for paging. Now let's get rid of that for now, and let's do some more in-depth searches. So search. All right. So let's search by ID. So let me grab ID here. Okay, again, search, read user input, ID, read ID input, and I have all these things available to me. So let's do ID equals, that should return 1 record, perfect. Now we could do greater than. So this is going to do string greater than. So, okay, apparently all those are greater than the ID. Greater than or equal to should probably return the same results. And then you have less than, I assume nothing, yep. Less than or equal to should return just that 1 record. And now we can do contains, that should return just that 1 record. Let's do contains, I don't know, something like contains a dash, it should return all records. Let's do like contains SRERP, I assume it'll just return 1. Perfect. And then we can do something like starts with, any of them start with an X. Oh, there we go. X, 7Y, Q, IQ. And then we can do ends with. See if any of them end with Y. None. X, Z, whatever. I'm sure it works. Ends in the empty string. Apparently all of them do. Okay, so hopefully you're seeing, this, how this works, right? This is everything that's available to you. It's all self-documenting. Reach string input, everything available to you there. Blog post. This one's interesting. So before I get to that, I guess let's do some more mutations. So let me comment that out. Okay, so we've got a lot of users created, but let's create some blog posts. So mutation, create blog post. Remember, let it guide you. So create blog post input. I'm not going to pass an ID in. Publish that is nullable, so I guess I'll just leave that null for now to be easy. And then I need a title and I need an author. So I'll just grab the last MJS ID to be the author for all these blog posts we're about to create. And okay, again, create blog post input. These are the fields that I might need. So type input, and then I'll say title, just to keep it simple, blog post 0, author. If I click here, it says there's a field called connect. So author, connect, and I'll put the ID in like that, and then I'll select the ID and title of this blog post, and I can also select the author, the ID, and the username, just to see. Awesome. So we've created a blog post. Here's its ID. It's called blog post 0, and you can see that the author is last.mjs. So let's just create and pull these blog post 1, blog post 2, 3, 4, and 5. All right. Let's go back to the queries. Let's get rid of the search for now. Oh, sorry. Let's do where ID equals. Just look at last.mjs for now. Okay, awesome. And let's grab last.mjs blog posts. Okay, so you can see all the blog posts that last.mjs has. So a couple of neat things I want to show you here. One is that we can actually filter. Well, okay. So I'm going to return all the users, but watch this. I can actually search with a cross-relational search. So I can search, I can say something like, give me all the users where the blog post's title equals blog post 0. So this should only return one user. Yep, last.mjs. So let's do where the title contains blog post. I mean, same thing. So just showing you how this works. And how did I know how to do that? Well, sorry, I'm just trying to really pound this in. Read user, search, blog posts right here. Read blog post input. Tells me everything that I can do. And we have these ands and ors as well. I mean, this tells you everything you can do. You can try the syntax out over here. If it's wrong, it should tell you. Okay. There you go. Now, that's a cross-relational filter up here. You can also do this down here in the selection set. So notice it's returning all the blog posts. But what if I don't, like, what if he has 1,000 blog posts? So right here, I can so in the selection set, blog posts has inputs as well. So in the selection set, I can actually say, limit that to only 2. And it will limit it. Man, this is so powerful. Like, I hope you can see how awesome this is because I think it's awesome. Okay. Limit to, that's already ordered nicely. But I mean, you have order. I mean, you have all these things. You're there. It tells you exactly what you have. So use this documentation to figure it out. All right. I mean, I don't know. I feel like I've pounded in queries pretty well. Just follow the documentation and just try it out. Let's see if we missed anything with mutations. I showed you. Yeah, we've done these a connect here. It's for many, like a one to many or many to many. It's the same thing. It's just an array, which it will tell you over here that. We haven't done an update. Let's do an update. So let me grab the ID of this blog post because we can play with updating that one. I'll just start over. Okay, so update blog post. Well, what do you know? These are the fields that I can pass in to be updated. And notice that they're all nullable except the ID because you have to have an ID. Right now, you can only update one record at a time. We don't have an update many at this time. So you have to pass in one ID and then you can change all these things. So update user input. For now, let's just put the ID in and then update. No, sorry. Update blog post. There we go. And let's change the title. So right now its title says blog post 0. I don't know. Let's say blog post 00. Look here, see if that works. There we go, blog post 00. And then let's query this. Let's do a new read blog post query. And here we are. Yeah, there's no more blog post 0. There's only blog post 00. So there you go. I mean, that's basically how update works, right? Just follow the documentation, pass in what it says. Notice author here is an update non-nullable relation 1 input. Well, that might sound confusing, but just click on it. You just have to connect an ID. So if I want to change the author on a blog post, let's do that. So where's our blog post? Here it is. Let's grab only this blog post. Okay. Let's take a look at the author. It's last.mjs. Well, let's make it last.mjs like 0. So let me query all the users and the username. Let's grab last.mjs. Oh, we don't have a 0. Okay, last.mjs 1. Grab its ID. Let's update blog post 0 down here with a new author. So I'll say author. Connect, yep. And there you go. So let me show you again. Update blog post. Here's the input. What is it? It's an input object. It has these fields. In this case, I'm going to change the author. And what does that look like? Well, it has a connect field. So it's an object with a connect field. And the connect has an ID, and the ID is just a scalar. It's just a string. So let me get rid of updating the title. Okay, so this should now change the author of that blog post. So blog post 0's author should now be last.mjs 1. So right here, yep, look, last.mjs 1. Okay, I mean, delete is similar. You just pass in an ID or a list of IDs. So it'll either delete one record or delete a bunch of records. I mean, there are nuances to all these things. You have to be careful with your nulls and non-nulls. You need to make sure it makes sense. If you delete one side of a relation where the other side of the relation can't be made null, might run into issues, so you need to kind of think through those. But in future tutorials, we can dive in on all these things, hopefully. So hopefully that's good. Hopefully that makes sense. The playground is extremely powerful, and I say you should make heavy use of it just to make sure all your queries and mutations work and that your schema makes sense. And yeah, good luck.